Welcome to How to Disaster. I'm Jennifer Gray Thompson, and here we are with my good friend and Eaton Fire survivor, Wright. Many of you know Io from Instagram during the LA fires. I think something like 44 million people ended up seeing him over a period of time and all of his videos. That's how I found him, and we're going to have a conversation about that. Io and his partner Patty have become friends and colleagues. They're innovators. They're really smart, and they're good community leaders. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation, and thank you so much for being with us. Welcome, Io Wright, to How to Disaster. It's so good to see you.
So nice to see you, JGT.
Yay.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you, and I want the audience to know that not only are you a colleague that I like and respect so much, but that you and Patty have become true friends to both myself and my team. And so I'm really looking forward to this conversation, and I just am really grateful for you and the friendship that we've developed over the past year. So thank you for being here.
Well, the most ditto in the whole world, you know that.
I know. It's good. This is going to be cozy, y'all, so, hang on. Okay. Where I wanted you to start with the audience is to tell your fire story and to tell them, how, most people don't choose to become a disaster leader. It chooses them. And certainly you were chosen, but also in many ways prepared for this moment. So can you walk us through, how did you get here?
Well, I built a house in Altadena, not from the ground, but I remodeled a house in Altadena to the studs with my hands. It was the first house that I ever owned that I didn't have to Airbnb. It was just mine, which was a really big deal for me. I come from a lot of housing insecurity, and that was a very important thing to me. So that was a huge milestone. And Altadena is this magical community, and I felt like it was really home. It had all the things that I really valued: outdoor space and just close enough to the city to be in a city, but just far enough to be not. Have a garden, incredible people. And my partner Patty moved in 4 months before the fires. And we had 3 animals at that point, and we had this beautiful, quiet life, which I'm from New York City. That was a real curveball, but I loved it so much. And let's see, on January 7th, I was in Joshua Tree. I had to go to Joshua Tree for work. And Patty, my partner, she went through Hurricane Katrina. We both went through Hurricane Sandy in New York. This was we knew that a friend of ours, her boyfriend is one of the captains of the Malibu Volunteer Firefighters Brigade. So she told us about watch duty a few days before the fire, and she was like, hey, Ryland is in charge of the weather reports. There's these really big winds coming. It's really big fire risk. I'm worried about you guys. Please download this app so you can stay abreast. And we were like, okay. And as things got worse and worse and worse in the Palisades, we were like, it's not coming over here, but that's terrifying and scary, and what does this mean, and whatever. And on the 8th, the 7th, I had to leave, and I was like, well, I guess I'll pull out my my journals from when I'm a writer. So I was like, the journals from my childhood are things that if I don't have them, my mind will break. And my mom's photo collection, without which her mind would break. And I was like, okay, here are the few things, but my house is not going to burn down. That's not what's happening here. And I had to leave, which sucked. And the next day, Patty has an attuned weather vane for potential disaster, obviously, from her experiences. And so she, throughout the day, was keeping me posted, being the wind's getting really intense. And the second that things sparked up on the Eaton Fire, she was like, we're out of here. And so I started racing back from Joshua Tree. She packed everything into the car, and a friend of ours raced over and was like, Io, what do you need from the house? And I was like, I don't know, throw some clothes in it. I have no idea. And I was racing back, and as I was coming towards LA, the whole mountainside was on fire. The scale of it was just unbelievable. And Patty was on the roof with the hose, and I started a group chat with all of our neighbors the day before, being I know you think I have tinfoil on my head or whatever, but for real, please download this app and start looking out for what's coming. And a couple of them later were like, that saved our lives. So we were going to go to bed. Like if you hadn't started that
Shout
chat,
out
like,
to Watch Duty, John Mills. Thank you.
Oh my God. John Mills changed the game. He made it possible for us to even language what was going on. So I got back like the second like that she got out of the house. I met her in Pasadena. It was terrifying. Everything was orange, and we went to a friend's house and we spent the night. And as we were going to bed, the fire was moving in the opposite direction of our house. So it was moving east, and we were west of the fire. And overnight, it changed directions and it decimated western Altadena. And so we woke up and nobody knew what had happened, but I remember we were in our friend's driveway in Larchmont, which is like the center of LA and usually a very insulated area, and the sky was just like dark orange. It was biblical. It was like, it's going down. If there is a God, he's coming for us all right now. Like this is end times energy, and which you know well.
Yeah.
And we got a video, that chat that I had started with the block. Somebody sent a friend up to check out what was going on, and they sent a video of her house, which she was my next door neighbor, and the video was like, guys, the guy was like, it's really bad, I'm sorry. And then the video came through and we were standing in the driveway, and I remember Patty was in the back of the pickup truck and I was standing right next to it, and this video came through and we watched it, and it panned from her house like up the block, and there were just trees down everywhere and everything was in flames, and it panned over her like yard wall, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's our living room. And it was an inferno. And I remember the feeling of just like stomach drop of, oh my God, like it's us, you know? And we just like, I had to take a minute. I was like, I need a second. And so I stepped away, and it was just shock. And I went around the corner and I sat on somebody's lawn, and it was so amazing. There's this guy in my life, George, who's like a mentor figure, and he happened to call at that moment. He's literally like the person who I would call in a crisis, and he called me to check in, and I was like, what? And I was like, George, 5 minutes ago I discovered that my house is just burned down, or it's burning down right now. And he was like, fuck. And I didn't have anything to say. I was just like, I don't know what. And I was wordless, which is really rare for me. And then, yeah, we decided to go to Joshua Tree because the air was so bad, and we were just like, okay, we got to go somewhere safe. And I have a house in Joshua Tree, and so we were like, which is 2.5 hours out of the city for those who don't know. And we put our animals in the truck, and we're like, what does this even mean? And I remember she was driving one car, and I was driving the truck, and just being on the freeway with like the things that she had managed to get out, like the animal stuff and like my mom's photos and my journals and whatever, and just being in shock driving. And then I had to charge the truck, and this guy really wanted the charger that I was on. And he just kept, I was like on the phone with the one person I knew who worked in disaster recovery. And I was like, how do I bring people shovels? Like, how do I go back and help? And when can I go back and help? And he was like, I don't know that you want to be doing that right now, buddy. Yeah. And this guy was just like pacing back and forth by the window being like, how long are you going to be? How long? And finally I just rolled the window and I was like, my house just burned to the ground. I don't know when I'm going to be off the charger. And he was like, huh? Just was like, I'm so sorry. And that kicked off like many months of people perpetually being like, ah, when interacting with us, you know.
Well, you and
like,
Patty
well, my
are the
house
ones
didn't
who
burn down. Like,
right, but you guys are the ones who created a bumper sticker that I love. And what does it say?
Keep honking, my house burned down.
That's right. It's not funny to have your house burned down,
point of
but you can make it
you
like,
know?
you know, yeah, I totally understand. I totally understand. So the way that I found you was on Instagram, and you're probably the only person in the history of my 56 years, or the history of my Instagram, which is not that long, that I've ever like slid into their DMs ever.
Ever?
Never. I think so. I don't think I've ever messaged anyone on Instagram before. No. So I was
wow.
like, when I found you, it was maybe like 3 months in or 2 months in, around there. And I'd been doing reels because there was so much disinformation. And so I would do 90 seconds of like trying to counteract just so that really people could then send me death threats all day. So that was not fun at all. But I said, oh, wait, this guy's like, I was listening to it, I think it was on Attorneys or something, and I was like, you know exactly what you're talking about. You were the first person that I saw online on that medium who knew what they were talking about and clearly had done their research. So when I slid into your DMs, it was like, good job. This is awesome. I can stop now because I don't have to do it since you're doing it, and I can center the person who's actually living it every day and doing a good job. And then we talked on the phone, and it was like, it was great. And that led to this really good working and personal relationship with us and your partner, Patty. But what made you go from being a fire survivor to deploying all of your skills as a journalist and a podcaster and a writer, and you were doing it constantly? So talk about that disinformation, information, but also having the capacity to do that and to do it so well.
I mean, thank you. I remember you reached out and you had to reach out like 3 different platforms. And I remember the final email, I think, was like, hey, I can help you. Fucking call me. And I was like, all right. So our house burned down like 3 a.m. on the 8th or whatever, in the morning of the 8th. And that night, I was really afraid that people were not taking it seriously because the fire was still burning, and I was worried that more people were gonna do what we did and like just be like, well, it's not coming for me. And I made a first video that was like, hey, don't make this mistake on the day of. And that was a little more like, I don't know. The next day, how did this go? It was like that night we were so utterly lost because there's nothing. There's no alert from the city or the county or I don't know. Okay, you're a disaster survivor. Your house just burned down. Now you're part of this system. Here's everything you need to know. There was literally nothing. Crickets. When I called the mortgage company, I was like in shock at Target. The power was out at the house in Joshua Tree, and I was like, I guess I have to buy fucking candles of all things. And so I'm like in Target walking around trying to find lighters while my house is burning down. And I'm on the phone with the mortgage company, and I was like, hi, the house that this mortgage is on is burned to the ground and I need to pause my mortgage, I guess. And they were like, oh, would you like to take your house off auto pay? And I was like,
sorry, but
that's not quite what I'm asking for, you know? I called my insurance company and they were like, what fires? And I was like, Google fires. I'm like, what are you talking about? LA is an inferno. Anyway, so there was nothing. And so when we got to our house, we somehow got connected with this guy, and he had been in the Woolsey fire. And this was my first interaction with what I would come to know as this incredible fire survivor community and the spirit that like really carries through. This guy was a total stranger, had no idea who we were, and all night he had been on the phone with people answering their questions. So he got on the phone with us and he was like, listen, he was not totally correct about everything, but he was like, your house is called a grounder. It's not, it's called a total loss, whatever. He was like, it's a grounder. Here's how long it's going to take. It's going to take about 2 years. Your insurance policy is probably going to grow a little bit, so don't panic if that's all you see in there. And he just was like, here's how this works. And he was like, sign up for the Army Corps debris removal program. If you don't, it will cost you that. And he was very like, here's what I learned, and you know, take what you like and leave the rest kind of energy. But he was that grounded us in a way where we even hadn't like it was like we had been dropped on another planet, and we didn't know if there was oxygen outside the doors. And he was like, there is. Here's how you breathe it. And we were like, okay. So as we were talking to literally every single one of our neighbors who also lost their homes, everyone was totally lost. And I started to realize, oh, we have more like reach in terms of knowing how to ask for help or how to language needing information from people, and I know how to ask questions. And I started seeing things pop up on social media that I knew were wrong, and I was like, this is going to harm people. I have a lot of experience, unfortunately, with how misinformation can be really, really harmful and detrimental. And I knew, oh, this neighbor has, you know, very little insurance and she's 76. If she gets the wrong piece of information, like that could really damage her in a really big way. So I was like, all right, I'm going to just tell the internet. I fact checked what the guy said for the most part, besides the grounder thing. And I just, on the 9th, I got on the internet and I was like, I know everyone that I love around us is hurting and everyone in LA is terrified and the scale of this is unfathomable. So this brought me comfort. So I'm going to share it with the many, many thousands of people who are in this with me in hopes that like maybe it will help somebody. 4.1 million people have watched that video. For context, the population of the city of LA is 3.8. So that was nuts. And from there, it was this feeling of like, we were in a panic and we were like, does this mean we're in financial ruin? How do you interact with insurance companies? On the comments of that Instagram post, all these previous survivors swarmed and started being like, yes, this is accurate, or no, that's not accurate, or here's what worked in my fire, and here's what to look out for when filing a claim. And it was like the thing that you know so well, where people are just like, here's all the things I can give you. And I was like, how do we formalize all this? How do we make sure that more people can access all of this? So I started researching things that they were saying. I figured out that you could get we were like, what do you mean you still have to pay a mortgage when your house burns down? What do you mean you still have to pay your taxes? And so then I figured out, oh, this is how you file for tax relief. And then that was another big video. And I come from journalism and believe in a fact check. So I was like, let's fact check the life out of things. And I also come from podcasting and entertainment. And I was like, let's keep things really. I also was a public speaker at universities for like 7 years. So I know you keep things in a trauma state, you got to keep it really chill and really simple and calm.
Bite-sized pieces, calm.
Bite-sized, calm, and also from the perspective of the person who's living it. Like, what actually matters here? I don't need to talk about heady shit. I need to be talking about here's how you do this one thing. And I just started doing that every day. And everything that we came across that we needed for our recovery, I would fact check it. And then I met you, and you were like, here are all the experts you can go to for things in insurance, things in, you know, whatever. And I remember you were like, here's a menu of experts that you can call. And I was like, that's what I need, because that's how I'm going to be able to get people actual good information, and it can go to everyone around us. So we started from there.
For those who aren't, because some people will find this because it's part of After the Fire, but it's a little different. So a big part of our model is finding people like Io and saying, here is that menu, and we have vetted all of these people, and you have access to it. But we also say add them to your bank of information. But trust your own knowledge of your own community first, and don't let anybody center themselves in your disaster. But we vetted these people, and also to make it easier for you, because the vetting of those people can be exhausting, and you have to know that they're not trying to sell you anything, they're not trying to defraud you, that they're really people who just care. That's why we call it the worst club, best people. They're people who really want to help, and so just for context, to let people know. So that's really where our highest and best value lies.
I mean, it changed what we were able to do for sure, because it was suddenly like, 18.5 million people have watched that content that I made, like over that period, like whatever that was, 3 months of posting every day or something, and then on for another year. And we're still doing it now, just a little more formalized. But I did not like that if you didn't follow the right people, or if you didn't speak English, or you were not an Instagram person, you weren't going to get the information. And so we created a website and started publishing guides. And at first we created a forum. We created like the first network for people to talk to each other. And what we were hearing back was that like people, it was more work for them to log into a forum and try to figure it out and navigate and talk to each other, and that some of them really liked it, but elders weren't going to log into, I think we were on Discord first and then Reddit, and there was like a class and race divide and an age divide, and we were like, okay, what if we just take this bite-sized information model and formalize that and just really lean into, if you get information, we're going to call it PostFire, and if you get information from PostFire, you know that it's been triple fact-checked and verified, and we're going to do this nonprofit so you know we're not selling you anything, and you can trust it. We started doing Q&As because everybody was really confused about debris removal, for example, or the air quality was the first one. Everybody was terrified about the air quality. People's noses were bleeding, and there wasn't real information about what was actually going on. I remember Beyonce's mom posted a video that I made about, like, I just decoded an air quality thing that somebody else had done. I was like, look, here's what they're saying in 90 seconds. And she posted it on her main page, and I was like, okay, I live in LA. I really live in LA. And also, like, people really need this and want this. 2 million people watch that video.
They do.
So then we formalized it, and we made it an organization that gets people excellent guidance for free.
I will say that
largely to your model.
Well, I love that because, you know, it's very complimentary, which is wonderful. I mean, as in spelled with an E, not an I. So I really appreciate that because it kind of takes all brains, all hands to get to the other side of it. When we first started talking, one of the first things that you said to me was that you were really shocked at the gaps in disaster, the gaps of information, the gaps in the system. And I think that for every person who goes through a disaster, especially in mega fires, because they're only about 10 years old, there is a huge shock to the system that there isn't this perfect, cavalry that's going to come in and handle things and tell you exactly what to do. And then all you have to do is follow the leader, and then you turn around and instead, like, you are the leader, but you're the leader who's only been in this moment for like a hot minute. And that's really hard and disorienting. Ultimately, it's empowering, but it's very disorienting, in the immediate. So can you talk about that process when you realize how many gaps were in the system?
I mean, I think because we were living it, we weren't like by proxy affected. We were literally total loss survivors. We got confronted with that on day one. Like I was saying, we were just like, oh my God, there's nothing. There's no one to turn to. And you start Googling stuff and there's also nothing. And you're like, what?
Well,
like,
I'm on there. You just needed to Google better. Everybody else in LA was calling me like 12 hours in.
Where is JGT? I think also like what was unique about our approach is probably because I'm ADHD. I don't learn things in the same way that other people do, and then you add a big trauma to it. I need things in our approach to it is trauma-informed design, neurodivergence-informed design, so it's really easy to grab when your brain can't handle a complex website and can't handle picking through a bunch of links or can't handle processing a bunch of words that you don't understand your first time hearing the word, policy limits and coverages. You're just like, what is all this shit? So we have always strived to do it in a way that like anybody who, no matter what state they're in, can be like, oh, that's in language that's like really graspable and I can understand that when you're in a trauma state. Yeah, it was really weird. There was a moment there where everyone in LA knew who I was. And I was the fire guy. And everywhere I went, like I came into LA, thank God we were in Joshua Tree because we came into LA for like an event at a Levi's, like they gave away a bunch of clothes. And I remember I couldn't walk 3 feet. And I was like, being a celebrity sucks. Like I don't ever want
I think that happened
this.
to you when we were out to dinner a couple months ago too, that somebody walked up to you and they were like, they recognized you from the gram.
The fire guy. I've been.
The fire guy.
Hey, it's an incredible honor, and I'm so glad that it worked and it was helpful. I never monetized my account, and like, there's just like, it was never about that. It was never for anything else, and I think that's why it worked. And it also made it so that because we were living it on a daily basis, my updates were really timely with what people were dealing with, obviously. So it felt like a really big responsibility. Because people like you were looking and fact-checking, and I wanted to get it right and make sure that I was doing right by people who've been doing this work for a long time and who were entrusting me. You were saying, okay, well, then you do it,
Yeah.
And I really, really, really only cared about my neighbors and survivors. I didn't give a fuck if you were from Palisades or Altadena, and people were like, why are you gonna, Altadena needs it more. And I was like, no, they don't. Every single survivor, I don't care what your income bracket is, if you lose your home, you feel the same fear in your gut. Sure, if you don't have any other money in the bank, that's a completely different thing, but you still lost your home. You're still in shock. Your kids are still searching for their toys. You're still reaching for a book that's not there. I don't care. If you care, great. You want to silo your support? Go for it. We're not going to do that.
Initially, the hot take from many people was, oh, don't even worry about the Palisades because they all have money. And so we're going to save our attention and compassion for Altadena. And I just don't subscribe to that at all. Like, if you're a fire survivor, you're part of us, and everyone deserves compassion. And often when you give somebody something, it's about compassion and action. It's like something you can see, touch, smell that you need. And it's really about the community caring for you. So I appreciate that so much.
I just also don't believe in blanket statements about any group of people. It's always wrong when you're like, oh, well, they have, or they believe, or they whatever. As close as I get to a religion or a subscription to a school of thought is that, like, I don't two-dimensionalize groups of people. I'm not doing it. And if you're talking about Palisades fire survivors all being rich, you're wrong. So
you're totally wrong. Yeah.
Let's take it to the map.
And they need help. Everybody needs help. Period. End of story. It's the rare person post-disaster who doesn't need the intellect, the care, the compassion of another person. It just pretty much doesn't exist. So.
And that was also the thing that we found was that, like, no matter how much money you had, you still had no navigational support. You still were like, what the fuck do I do now? So we figured that there would be something like what we've built now, something that guides you through step by step how to recover, and there just wasn't. And so we were like, okay, we don't like that if you don't follow the right people or somehow get my information or whatever, or follow you, or you're not getting guidance if you're not, in the certain groupings. Also, I was watching a lot of these events happen where they were giveaway events, and the nicer stuff was like gone in 30 minutes, and it was all white people between the ages of like 28 and 45 because they knew how to find it, knew how to get there, able-bodied, could show up, boom, everything's cleared out. Or the less nice stuff, all these events were like you have to wait online for 2 hours, show your ID, you don't know what you're going to get, and then like if you can get in there. So if you have a job, you can't do that. If you have kids, you can't do that. If you don't follow the right people to hear about it, you can't do that. And if you don't feel like being dehumanized, you can't do that. If you can't drive, you can't do that. It was just like, how is this the system in 2025? So we thought, okay, what if what is most needed? A disaster navigation tool is needed. A recovery navigation tool is needed. So what if we took the model of bite-sized chunks of fact-checked and verified information and put it on a timeline in a beautiful, easy-to-interact system? And the other thing was information overload. I was getting things for renters, and I was getting things for uninsured people, and I couldn't parse it all, so I was starting to lose all these resources because I just couldn't keep track. And not to mention when you're like, oh, apply for this grant or apply to this or whatever, you go, you fill out the same form 500 times. They may or may not still have funding. They may or may not have shuttered their doors in 1996. You have no idea, and then it ends up taking so much of your day that we just ended up not even applying. Like, I filled out the same application like 30 different times for grants. I think we got 1, 2.
But in addition to that, you're still doing your insurance. You're doing, if you lost a car, you're doing car insurance, your house insurance. You're doing FEMA. FEMA likes to, unfortunately, their system is set up to deny before it approves, and because there is such rampant fraud. But they're at least they're addressing that in the LA fires. At least they talked about it a little bit more, which was good, because there was so much disinformation coming from the entire nation around what was going on in LA. But people have to understand that in addition to the trauma that you have, then you enter into a convoluted system that is not set up for anybody who's in any kind of trauma, and would really be difficult in the most blue sky of times. So this is why I love PostFire.
There are executive orders about how innavigable disaster recovery is, and trying to fix it and simplify it. Like, we've known about this problem for a long time in this country. The fact that FEMA, first of all, we've talked to thousands of survivors in LA. Most people got the $770 that FEMA gives you in the very beginning, or $670 or whatever it is, and that's it. Your average person has never seen a dime more than that, unless you are completely uninsured and have like very extenuating circumstances.
Well, you can get like $43,000 on top of that, but you have to know that, and you have to know to do appeals. So, but this is part of why
the average person doesn't qualify.
Well,
the average person hasn't they have been told that they don't.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's like, I'm not here. So here's the thing, like, the people inside of FEMA, and I know a lot of people inside of FEMA, like, they also think that the system needs to change. So I just want to be very clear that there isn't a person inside of FEMA who's like, this is perfect, this is great, this is good, this is how it should be. That's not the case. They too want to modernize. Like, they feel frustrated by it. They see it. And I think we have an opportunity to do that now, but I hear you so hard. There's also the SBA piece of it. Like, they come in. It's an SBA, for those who don't know, is Small Business Administration. And one thing that people don't understand is that they actually help people after disaster too. Like, but it's very hard to access those funds, and they sell it hard when the disaster happens. And then the reality of actually navigating that is at most, maybe 20% of the people who even apply, are approved for any kind of SBA help. Side note.
Is that
frustrating?
That's statistically, that's the number? Wow.
That's the number.
Yeah, it's incredibly arduous. We went through, we lost 2 properties in the fires. We also lost a rental property that we owned together. And that, having to navigate, I mean, look, the other side of this, there's a huge failing in disaster recovery, which is how we handle housing providers. So there was a huge housing crisis. It took us 5 months to find a place to rent. Everybody was gouging the rents. Nobody could find a place to live. And FEMA's estimation and the way that insurance works is they decide what fair market value is for your rental property, and then they give you way less than what it actually costs, especially in an environment where 100,000 people are also looking for housing. So we had a triplex that was 3 apartments, and while single-family residences, we're so grateful for it, have had their permit fees waived, while we got Army Corps of Engineers debris removal with single-family residences, the small mom-and-pop landlords got nothing. Nothing. We don't know if we're going to be able to figure it out with the triplex property, but when we're talking about taking care of disaster survivors, you've got a lot of people who work their whole lives to be able to have a little bit of a income from an investment property, and they're providing low-income housing or rent control. All of Altadena is rent controlled, so our apartments were rent controlled. And yet, we haven't been able to get those rebuilt and get any renters back in because there's no support for small businesses whatsoever. At PostFire, we've been able to take on like the individual disaster survivor and homeowner and renters, but we have not been able to move into small business side. But it's like the ability to house people should be front and center and first, right? But it's not at all. So anyway,
it's also that LA was denied a housing mission too for both fires, and so many communities, including mine in Sonoma, we got a housing mission, which meant that FEMA pays for rental assistance for 18 months, and it can go longer. Like Maui was just approved; there'll be a total of 3.5 years by the time they have to ask for it again. It's substantial. It can also also really mess with the housing market if it's not executed really carefully. But it's hundreds of millions of dollars that did not go to LA, and in fact, LA has not seen pretty much any dollars except for maybe for the actual fighting of the fire, which is called an FMAG. So it's
why?
It's the current administration. That's what it is. They just don't
Have
understand.
we applied for everything and been denied? Is that the reality?
Well, yes, we have. Yes, we've applied. Well, there are many different stages, but I don't want to bore everybody with all those things. And so you should have already gotten your CDBG-DR allotment or your appropriation from Congress. That should have already been done. Maui I'm supposed to not acronym so much. So Community Development Block Grant for Disaster, the largest funds in disaster, and they come through FEMA to HUD. And then Housing and Urban Development, then they disperse them. The amount has to be appropriated by Congress. There is a bill right now, it's actually in a housing bill, Road to Housing, that actually codifies or makes it automatic so that it's no longer can be held in political prison or delayed. In Maui's case, 500 days before they even approved it. In your case, we're still waiting. We know you're going to get it. There's some people who are very pessimistic about it, but I work on the Hill a lot, so I know you're going to get it. It's just that can slow recovery, like things, and that helps a lot with housing. But yes, it was very tough. And the other thing is that local district attorneys and even state, they just never prosecute this, ever. I've just never seen them prosecute it to the level that they should, and they should really be, it should be like, like January 6th, like that many people should be prosecuted after it happens.
The gouging?
But instead, the gouging. Yeah, and the secondary impact victims are the ones who are then, especially if they're undocumented or a vulnerable population at all, they often see their rentals. They didn't lose their house in the fire, but all of a sudden their rent goes up 2-3 times, 200 or 300%, and or they are illegally evicted and they say nothing because they don't have protected status, and then it's just messy. It's very messy, and you saw the mess, and in the middle of like you trying to navigate your own deal, you created something that we've been asking for since 2018. It wasn't within my capacity or skill set to do it, but we've been needing it for so long, which is like a TurboTax model of I'm a survivor. Like, what do I do? And we'd like it for public assistance, also called PA, which is for cities and counties, especially when they're rural or even in big cities, don't always know how to navigate what's possible in disaster. And that's how mistakes are made. They just assume things that aren't true. And this also would be very helpful for that. They should not have to work so hard. So so here we are. You are how many months post-disaster were you like, okay, we're going to create PostFire and then set it up in a way that is very trauma-informed, is not a bunch of clicks? How long?
I think it was like 3 months after the fires. We were like, oh, because my partner Patty comes from tech and like platform building. I do not. And she was like, we just kind of put our skill sets together, and she started digitizing things. She made the first map that there were all these different maps. It was like the debris removal map, this map, the other map, and she put them all together in one. And I was like, tech stuff. And then we were like, let's meld our skill sets, and we were like, let's build a platform. It was this tricky moment because it was the every day was 14-hour days and an avalanche of incoming from people who were desperate for guidance and information and resources. We were connecting people to housing. We were getting people Amazon wish lists fulfilled. We were like, I know this person who has money. I know that person. And we were just like all systems go, getting people mattresses, getting people clothing, whatever. And we had to make a choice where we were like, we can either wait until we can secure a grant or funding to do this thing and devote ourselves to fundraising for this idea, which will take us away from doing the work, or we can pay for it out of my personal property coverage, essentially, and hope that it figures itself out, because the need is so dire, it's going to figure itself out, right? People are going to adapt this. They're going to want this system because we know it's good. And so we decided to do it that way and keep doing the work. And we didn't put our nose to the grindstone on fundraising until the summer, maybe later. Mm-hmm. I guess like a year in, we started being like, okay, here we are. We actually, we're running out of our own money. This is insane. We have a staff. Like, we need help. And then we started coming up against how philanthropy feels about tech, which is a whole other arm of this conversation.
Well, we can do this before we explain the platform, but let's come back to that in just a minute, because I really do want to dive into that, because it's been a long-term frustration of mine. I never intended to run a nonprofit, but often, like, you can have a lot of impact in that space, but nonprofits don't. But philanthropy doesn't love innovation. So, but let's go. If you can tell us, because we're actually going to put up on the screen so people can see it. For those of you who are listening to this podcast, what we'll do is that we'll put the PDFs in the show notes, so you can go and look at those, including the link, so you can go look at PostFire. But you not only have the platform, but you also figured out how to make it to make it private, so that outsiders could not also come in, or the press, or people who shouldn't be in the platform, and to do an if-then scenario. So can you walk us through that, and then also talk about, on the other side, one of the big values for all of the sectors, from donors to the public sector to insurance to many people, is that you can anonymize the data that you're getting in order to help them make better decisions about how they actually serve after a fire, including things like how many adjusters have you gone through, things like that. There's a lot that's there, but we've not seen the system that will actually help until post-fire. So can you walk us through what it does?
Yeah, so we built it in response to things that people were saying were really hard for them. So initially, the very first thing that you interact with is like a really simple questionnaire about your circumstances. And the reason that we do that is so that we can build you a custom action plan based on your circumstances. So if you are a total loss insured homeowner who wants to rebuild, we will build you an action plan from the day of the fires until you're back on your new couch in your new rebuilt home. If you're a renter who's uninsured, you're going to get a completely different journey. So the first thing you do is you fill out this like really simple intake form that categorizes you and gives you an action plan. Then you come and you have to verify your identity. And the reason we do verification is so that when you're inside of the portal, you don't then have to fill out more forms to receive aid or grants or donated stuff, which we're also solving for. And so it's also to protect people from scams and people trying to take advantage of them.
Because they are always there.
Oh my God, is that a remarkable dark underbelly of society. Yep. So then you come into the portal and it's like, hi, Jennifer. Welcome to PostFire. We're so glad you're here. And it gives you like a video that's like, here's how to use the system. And then it's like, here's your action plan. So you click on your action plan and it takes you, like I said, bite-sized little steps from the day of the fire. So it starts with like, get somewhere safe. And then you keep clicking next step, and there's different content types. Sometimes there's a video in there. Sometimes there'll be like just like a little piece of text. It's like, hey, if you need to replace your ID or whatever, here's how you do it. And then it will link you out to the thing. If there's something more elaborate, like when it gets into insurance, it's like, let us tell you what you need to know before you file a claim to do this in a way where you protect yourself, because of all the stories we've heard of how people have said the wrong thing and then it's ended up, whatevering and screwing them over later. So that would be a guide. And those are like still bite-sized, but you click through like a couple of different slides. We also designed it to give you like a little bit of dopamine when you finish something, because in that process, every time you're just like in this slog of overwhelm, every time you make a little progress, it was so important to us to feel like, oh my God, we're forward moving at all. So every time you finish something, you mark it done, and it gives you this little bloop, and like it turns blue on all of your cards, so you can see your measure of progress. You're like, oh, I'm actually getting somewhere. I'm learning
And to
something.
be clear, it's graphics, too. It's not a bunch of photos of people, and I think that's really important, because then you're not distracted by that. It feels like a friendly person who's walking you through, and it doesn't feel like you're on another recovery website. I just think, for those of you who are listening, I want you to look at the actual graphics, because they are trauma informed, and I really like that piece of it.
And it's also written conversationally. It's not written by a robot. It's written by me and fact-checked with experts. But it's written to be like, Jennifer, this is how we're going to get you through this thing. I know that it probably feels like this right now, but when you get to this step, it's going to feel like that probably. And if it doesn't, that's okay. And we're here to support you every step of the way. And it's very like, if what I was going for was if you had a older brother or older sister who worked in disaster recovery, who really liked to fact check and who knew everyone to call, and they just did it all for you, and they could walk you through how to do every single thing. That was the feeling that we're going for in the tone of the writing and the guidance. So it's not this like very austere disaster stuff. Tends to feel very like, we deal with CDBGR, and you're just like, what? We're very like, there's money that's coming from the government, and here's how you get it. It's human language. And the more funding we get, the more videos we can make, and like it can be pod, it can be audio. The more ways that people can take in the information that they need, the more likely they are to recover more quickly and better and healthily. So
and to feel
we
less
like to meet
alone
people where
too,
they are.
you know.
Critical thing. All these like surveys have come out and all the stuff to just shore up what we already know, which is that people get information from the people that they trust, and they get information from each other. So when you make people not feel so alone and you connect them to each other, and then you give them good information to give each other, that's a recipe for success.
Hey there.
Hi.
Can you tell me your name and what you're doing at this event?
My name is Rashida Dev, and I have a pop-up for Hard Press Graphics. We do Altadena inspired merchandise.
Like this? Like books, journals, water bottles? You're wearing one, I'm wearing one?
Hats, shirts. This is one of our new designs.
So it's a new company?
Yes, for a year since the fires. We started after the fires to supplement our income. I lost my business, Tribe Walks, which is a massage business, massage and body care. So we started Hard Press to supplement until I'm able to get back into Altadena.
And how do you pick what sayings to put on the tees?
Well, my fiance, Raji Jackson, he's the graphic designer. We do it together. We kind of decide like, how's that sound? What's that sound? And it's also to inspire the community. So it's stuff that we can just think that feels good, that helps uplift our moods, and stuff like that. And also, I'm an Altadena native, so that
are?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. So the hat on the side, it says OG, like original. And so Altadena. So that's where that one came from. So just different.
So the building that you had your business in burned down, is that right?
Yeah.
And you didn't work for how long?
Over 6 months.
Over 6 months. And you said that just this weekend you had a pop-up or something?
Yeah, we were at the Poppy Festival yesterday. So we did, that was the first time I did a pop-up for Tribe Walks. Since I haven't been working. I started working temporarily in South Pasadena. I rented a place out there, but I really want to be back in Altadena.
Of course you do.
The commercial side hasn't really built up yet.
And a lot of customers are still gone.
A lot of customers are gone too. So until temporarily, I'm in South Pasadena. Not full capacity, but
You're there.
able to.
And do you have any children?
I have a stepdaughter. So
And how is she doing coping with the...
she's doing good. She's like her dad. She goes with the flow.
She's resilient.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah,
Well, listen, we can't forget the history of Altadena
Yeah.
and the Black community.
Yeah.
So it is so great to see your smiling face.
Thank you.
And to see you kicking and coming up with ideas
Yeah,
and fighting
yeah.
back.
Yeah.
So congrats on being an OG.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It was really shocking to us to dive into the research and find that quality guidance is just as strong a predictor of recovery success outcomes as cash aid. And that everybody is like, oh, well, let's give people $1,000 or $5,000 or whatever, which is incredible, and please don't ever stop. But not
Like,
a lot
please
of
don't
focus.
ever stop. But yeah.
Never stop.
Never stop.
But not a lot
Do
of
not
focus
bring them
on
your
the
used
information.
underwear, but bring them cash.
Oh my God.
Everybody gets
so
it.
this is the other side, right? Like, you have to own a home to lose a home. which means that you're not like that's a buying base. That's a customer base for the purchase of building materials, the purchase of services, the purchase of furnishings, clothing, like all this stuff. So I was like, wait a second, why is there not more of a collective negotiating strategy happening here?
Yeah.
Oh, because there's no centralization. So if there's no centralization, then each little pocket of neighborhood captains are organizing 10 people on the block and getting 10% off their windows or 15% off their windows, but they don't have the buying base to go in and say, there are thousands of us, give us 40% off. And we don't want to all order at the same time. So for months, people were like, how do we get everyone discounted building materials? And we were quietly in the background being like, I think this is how we do it. And we built the system.
And you also built a rebuild calculator that a lot of people are using in the LA fires, for sure. And a lot of philanthropy is even using it. People are using it. Mahalo for that.
It's so remarkable that I started being like, hey, we need, like, Trulia Mortgage used to have this calculator where you could figure out if you could buy a house because it would tell you, you know, if I got an interest rate at this or if I put this much down, and it was sliders. And I was like, this is so smart because it lets me imagine.
Yeah.
What if we built a rebuild calculator that takes into account all these disparate parts of your insurance coverage that you're like, what the hell is even all of this? And then people were getting information about how much it costs to build, cost per square foot, but you have no idea if that includes your foundation. You have no idea if that includes a stick of fencing. You have no idea what that contractor, whether they're talking about builder grade finishes or what, and it doesn't include permit fees or, you know, sometimes it does, sometimes it's you're just like, it's mumbo jumbo garbage. It's essentially completely useless. So I was watching, especially all these elders who did not sign up to build a house, hadn't been in the market for 30 years, being like, I met this guy and he's telling me it's, you know, $750 a square foot for my, and I'm like, oh my God. So we built this calculator where you can input all of your own stuff. You can copy it off of your insurance policy and input it there. And then it gives you a breakdown of what's actually involved in a rebuild budget. And you can be like, okay, if I spend this much on my architect, puts me over this much under, and you can play with your own sliders, fully ripped off the Trulia Mortgage calculator. And when we took the idea out to philanthropy, and we're like, hey, we need $25,000 to build this calculator because that's how much development costs to build a custom digital tool. They all were like, aren't there online tools already that do that? Can't people figure it out online? And I was like,
Nope.
No, literally no. That's why I'm coming to you with this ask. And they didn't pay for it. So I paid for it. And that money, you know, now we hear about all
But they did, some of them
using
did
it.
then turn around and use it, though.
Oh, they all use it.
Yeah.
They all use it, which is
That's really the key up, though, for our next part of the conversation. But for those of you who are listening to this, I do encourage you to visit PostFire or go online and watch this part of the video, because we've asked IO to do a screen record so you can actually watch how somebody would go through it. It also helped people find their block captains. The block captains are a system that we brought to LA that we were doing here in Sonoma County. It doesn't work for all communities. It works pretty well there. It wouldn't have been appropriate for Maui, for example, at the time. But LA is a place that's has a very particular love language. Attention is the greatest commodity, but
Oscars.
Information. Yeah, Oscars. The Oscars. Yes, you should get
Give
an
us
Oscar.
awards.
Yeah. Oh, we could. Maybe that's how we do it. Maybe we just start a big awards show for all the coolest innovations. But
People love that shit here.
They do like it. It's we don't judge. We just walk in. We're like, okay, what's the love language, and then how do we actually serve you in the language that you'd like to be served? And LA is a very demanding marketplace. It's the hardest that I've worked since our own fires, for sure.
Wow.
Like they're mainlining y'all are mainlining my brain and the team, which is fine. But it's really far more intensive than many fires, but also your fires it's a double disaster. It's a sister disaster. It's huge. It's a huge disaster. So we know that innovation is coming out of it. We know that the marketplace has a lot more attention to it of what is needed or what can be done. And some of those innovations are getting attention, or they are iterations of other innovations that actually started in like Paradise, for everything from gravel grant to housing plans. And we love that the housing plan libraries are getting so much attention in LA. They're really beautiful. The collectives are super cool, and they are helping to get people home, and we appreciate that. But we support them so much, but we also want funders and the industry to recognize that there's so much more we must do, and including the thing that you're talking about is formalizing the ability to do group buys. And you and I talked earlier when you told me you wanted to do this, and I was like, oh, I tried to do this years ago. And I made a deck and I showed it to my board in like 2019, maybe 2018, I don't remember. And they were like, no. They said no because we were so overwhelmed with trying to invent everything else. But I absolutely believe that a lot of the private sector, the stores, the white label furniture, whoever, West Elm, whoever it is, that they're missing this massive customer base, because they don't need your couch discount a week after the fires. They need it 3 years later when they're home. And talk about what you're building or what you're doing with that in particular, so people can envision it.
Okay, so 80% of survivors in LA are underinsured. 10%, this is rough, right? But like roughly 10% are uninsured. Roughly 10% are adequately insured. 80 to 90% of people need financial help to come home. 90%. So when we're talking about just total loss alone, we lost 12,500 single-family residences. So you say 2.5 people are living in each household. It's like roughly 40,000 people who are out here buying every single thing that they own all over again, including a home. So they're buying all the services that go along with that: architecture, contracting, building materials, whatever. Many of us recognized early on, we're all buying the same thing. Why are we all paying retail? That's insane. When you think about it from just like a business perspective, when you go and you negotiate, so let's say you call up the building material supplier and you're like, hey, I've got a lot of fire survivors here and we all are buying windows and we all want a bigger discount because we're all here and we're all buying windows. The person selling the windows is going to say, okay, great. Well, then either all of you come to me together, or how do I make sure that you're all fire survivors?
Right.
So that was the previous model, was all of you come to me together. So what we did was the other one. We're going to make sure that everyone we bring to you, there's a lot more of them, but they're all fire survivors. Because the survivor perspective is, I can't team up with my neighbors and buy windows at the same time, because that's not how construction works. Also, that's not how the insurance process works. All of us have insurance companies breathing down our necks being like, build, 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 build. Why are you not building? You're not building fast enough. So you don't have choice over your timeline. You're just like on this train. You're like being ridden by a horseman and you're just like, okay, I'm building my house. I can't coordinate with my neighbor to do that at the same time because my neighbor is busy having a nervous breakdown in another country right now. Like, there's just no way.
Well, many people are not ready until their loss of use runs out at 2 years. Like, they are not ready. They need time to recover from the trauma to decide, even to make the decision. Some people need all that time plus just to do their contents list. They need all of that.
The
and so
contents list.
That, yes.
And
so
not to mention
yeah.
the soil toxicity. And we've had crazy toxicity stuff in LA, so none of us knew if it was safe to build anyway. So we're under all this anyway. We're under pressure.
There's no
from all
soil
these different
testing.
directions.
Usually, you would do soils testing for those who don't know. In this case, the cleanup had to be done in the 180 days promised 100% by the former president, and so there was just a different marketplace when you're looking at the different landscape, not marketplace, but landscape for many things. Happened in LA that were unprecedented, including the level of soil toxicity, because it's the most urban fire that we've had as well. So just to set that. Okay, go.
And in Altadena specifically, a lot of homes built before 1978, so a lot of lead and asbestos. So the reality from a fire survivor perspective is, I can't band together with my neighbors often. It hypothetically, it like doesn't work. The vendor is like, every Tom, Dick, and Harry is calling me saying they've got 5 neighbors they want to get together with. I'm going to just give them 5% off or 10% off. And you know what? I don't want to deal with all of you. I'm just going to give all survivors 10% off, whatever. And that's what many generous vendors have done. wonderful. When you actually stack up what that means, it's not at all what you could get if you banded everybody together. And it's not unionizing, but like something like that, like a
Well,
Costco.
it's collective economic. We always we'd like to advise that people do band together because it gives you social, economic, and political power. Like that's the reality of it. At a time when everything has been done to you, then it gives you agency too over how you get home. And in the age where insurance is going to determine so much of how we rebuild, then it means that your costs are higher. And even though your insurance allows for some of that, it's not going to cover up to the highest standards. So your windows have to be different than they were before. Those are way more expensive. So anything that you can do, absolutely.
So we figured out by verifying people who enter the PostFire portal, now we have this buyer base essentially that is all verified. So within that portal, once you've made it inside of there, it's really easy for us to give you a discount code to just go buy something, and we don't have to make you fill out a form again and go through all this stuff.
On your own timeline.
That's the most important part.
Yes.
Our goal is always to make life easier for fire survivors who are in an impossible overload situation. So asking them to go do all this extra work of coordination is against our mandate and not what we think is best for survivors. So we were like, okay, we want you to give them 40% off, 35% off, 55% off, the lowest you can go. You want to be first in line for the 6,500 people we already have in our network? Give us your best possible pricing. And of course people are like, oh, well, you solved the hard part. And because we can say to them, everyone that we can sign a contract saying everyone that we send to you is a verified fire survivor, because we've invented a whole system to verify their identity that's more streamlined than the one FEMA uses. Like, we can sign a contract saying that. And so they're like, okay, great. You solved the really hard part. And you're going to do all this crazy lead gen for us and send us all these clients. Of course we're going to give you discounts. But that system takes some like upkeep and some doing and some funding.
Oh, it is.
But like
free?
on the lowest, the lowest estimate,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
GGT. If we did, I think it was like, so 30. Your building materials are about 30% of the cost of your build. So if your average home in LA is like about $1 million to build, that's $300,000, $333,000 on each home. And if we can save you 40% of that, I think the estimate was like if we could save you 20% or 25%, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was like on 1,000 homes or 2,500 homes, it was like $65 million.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about impact of digital tools, if we've created a system that plays into commerce rules that can get every survivor, and that's just total loss. We're talking about smoke damage. Any survivor, there are hundreds of thousands of homes in LA that need help. We're not doing a charity thing with these entities. They're not doing any donations. They're not giving anybody anything for free. They are playing by commerce rules. We will give the best pricing to the people who bring us the most business. We will give, therefore, PostFire and all of its members the best pricing. And it's free to join PostFire, and so you get discounted things via doing this free thing. Everybody wants it. But then when you take that to philanthropy, they're like,
we're going to get there. I promise. The other thing is that it has what's called a client journey, which is what every retailer wants anyway. It's something that they do internally. I only knew that because when I was trying to do this, I was working with somebody who had a long career at Banana Republican and others, that whole company. So, and he was super smart. And so he was
It's
an
not
executive.
called Banana Republican. It's called
I
Banana
call it that
Republic.
because when I buy stuff from there, that's what I look like. So I'm okay with it.
I just wanted to make sure.
I
you knew.
know, but I couldn't. It just rolled right out of my face hole. Okay. So it also has the client journey, so retailers can even anticipate the next steps. And when a fire comes, a fire or a disaster, but fires are very particular. When it comes, they can actually anticipate in advance what they should have deployed and ready to go, and at the stages of which they can also then bring people into their brand and build brand loyalty for the rest of their lives. Because if you're there for people, after a disaster, the most vulnerable time of their lives with compassion and a fair deal. Just fair. That's all people are looking for is fair.
Yep.
They will appreciate that because there's so much about the system that is not fair walking through it. So you have that too. So you have a way, you have a front-facing thing for survivors, if-then scenario, not too much information, trauma-informed. You are iterating and innovating on the back end constantly anytime you see a new need, right? So you have a rebuild calculator, you've got the marketplace, you have vetted information. Shout out to Valerie Brown, and everybody else who's helped, but especially Valerie Brown because she's on my team and she's awesome. So you have all of these things, and on the back end of it, you can anonymize it and actually provide information without violating anybody's privacy, but to help the entire system work a little better for fire survivors.
That was a huge thing that we heard, and we started going to all these conferences and conversations with government, and everybody was saying the same thing, from philanthropy to literally the county. We need better access to information. We need to know where people are, who they are, what they need, so that we know how to help them and how to reach them. We solved that. And we want to invest in data. We want to invest in the generation of good data. We started going to UCLA has this health outcomes conference. When you really start to get into it, all of these systems, the entire innovation of health outcomes, science, research is all predicated on access to quality data. And they need access to real survivors and real experiential data. We created that. The system outputs all of that data and that information. So in its best version, PostFire will have a data dashboard where you're I want to help. Let's say you're a philanthropy, and you're I want to help single moms who are between the ages of 35 and 55, and I want to particularly help people who are Spanish speaking or whatever your thing is. You could whittle it down, and then it gives you access to all of those people. And then you could literally click a button and be also the grant system right now creates so much tension and turmoil because people put out, you could get $15,000. And so all of us get this oh my God, I need it so bad. I'm going to apply for this thing. And then maybe you don't hear back ever. Maybe you don't hear back for 2 months, and probably you don't get it. But they could segment that and only reach out to the people that they actually want to serve. Or government, saying or there was a philanthropy who really wanted to help people with the gap to rebuild, and they didn't know what the gap was. We would have had that data. We would have known how much people's rebuild gap was. Or government not knowing how to reach people to tell them about the fact that if they didn't get their debris removal form in on time, they'd get a $100,000 lien on their property.
Yeah.
We figured that out by
Also because they were
accident.
being lied to often on the gram, on Instagram, on Reels by people who were self-dealing, who were no, who are following FEMA around and calling them out for being whatever they wanted to say and also the Army Corps of Engineers, and portraying them as fraudsters, and they're going to take your land, but trust me, I'm a private contractor, who are also not limited by the line item on your insurance. And so there's just so many problems with going private. It's really painful to watch at the time because I think one of the hardest things in LA has been there's so much noise in the information verse that even people who are well-meaning will put out, sometimes not you, but really bad information that's super demoralizing. And I know that I even overreact about it constantly. I'll be no. And then I finally came to the conclusion yesterday morning. I'm I cannot stop all of these people from sharing the wrong information. So all I can do is keep my head down and continue to do the right thing. But this does mean too, though, that I am now ready to talk about why philanthropy. We work with a lot of the funders in LA. We do funders briefings. I feel very fortunate. I feel like they hear us. I feel like we were very intentional to say fund innovation from the very beginning in Los Angeles, because we knew that the capacity would be there to innovate. And we knew that whatever came out of your fires not only would help you recover, but also help our other communities that are still in recovery and communities that will come. And unfortunately, we know that they will come. I have been quite surprised by the reluctance to fund PostFire when I am so clear all the time that this is what we've been waiting for, and this is what can make a huge difference. Part of it is that when philanthropy gets a lot of pushback, like they did after Fire Aid, then they become afraid. And it's easy to misconstrue what philanthropy is doing or make a big scandal where there is none. There just wasn't a scandal there, people. It just did not exist. And communications was really the major issue. They should have communicated better. Okay, everyone can, say yes to that. However, they did actually follow best practices, but that made a lot of big philanthropy afraid to fund innovation at the time where it could really help. And this is the year and next year and the year after where people are going to need what you're offering even more than they did, and they needed it a lot in the first year. I feel frustrated for you. I do think it's going to come, but can you talk about that process or what that's been like?
Yeah, I think that philanthropy is in an incredibly difficult position. It shouldn't be the case that an entire city is turning to the philanthropy system saying, save us in a disaster of this scale. That shouldn't be what's happening. No. The number of people who had just started their governmental term or just started at whatever the philanthropy was or foundation was that week, January 1st, all these people are starting their new jobs, and then the 7th and 8th, 6th, everything starts burning down. That's an awful position. And people didn't have any experience or know how to navigate that. Yeah. The reason why my work hit in the beginning was because of communications. That was the thing that I figured out how to do in a way that people needed and resonated with in that moment. And part of me is like, I should have maybe started a consultancy in communications instead, because I could help all these different entities with how to language. I could see the gap between what government was actually doing and what people were perceiving that they were doing.
Yes.
What government was asking them to do and what people were perceiving that needed to be done. Vast gulf. What philanthropy was actually doing, the amount of people who've received money from Fire Aid via all these other organizations that don't know that that's from Fire Aid and then are turning around with their pitchforks at Fire Aid, that's a communications issue and a communications gap. So that is something that I'm like really excited to take my learnings and help other people and entities with, no matter how all of this, shakes out, because that's a real need. We didn't go out in the very first rounds. Like in the very beginning, Fire Aid had all this money, and that was like where everybody went to get initial funding. We didn't chase it because we were too busy, like I said, being like, we got to stay where we are and do the work. Maybe that was a mistake. Probably that was a mistake. I don't know. It just wasn't our instinct in that moment. We also decided that we were never going to charge fire survivors anything for using our stuff. So we have this huge network of people that we've been very careful to never include like will you help us or whatever, because we just want to avoid that if we can. Also, maybe not the best strategy since a lot of people are well-heeled and would love to help. We've just never asked for it. When it comes to traditional philanthropy, it's been extraordinarily difficult because we are a new organization. One, people want to know that you've been around for a long time and that you have existing infrastructure. And when I stack like some of my frustration when I'm in these rooms hearing people's impact reports next to our impact reports, people are doing such incredible work in LA. These organizations have been around such a long time. We just have a different metric of impact in this one regard, the informational regard, that's so critically important, but it doesn't involve handing someone something. So especially after Fire Aid got torched for not doing it the right way, people got really focused on really demonstrable outcomes, which often means physical objects or checks. And PostFire is a multiplier. PostFire makes it so that if you want to give out physical objects, your organization doesn't have to staff a warehouse and pay for all of that and do all of those logistics.
Go into that. I skipped that part, and that's actually really important too. It actually streamlines donations, which can be a secondary disaster. And one of the things that is pretty adorable about you is I turn on my phone and I see that you are there talking to Kristen Bell. Can you explain that relationship and how you were able to deploy extra resources in the middle of a compounded crisis?
Yeah, so the poly crisis, as Adrian educated me about, is something that people don't really understand, right? So like when fire survivors, we're in this for years. So when your house burns down or your neighborhood burns down and you lose your job or you have smoke damage or whatever, and then 6 months later, SNAP benefits are taken away or ICE raids start to happen, those get layered on top for fire survivors. So when those things happen, people started to be like, well, wait, why should I donate to a fire organization? Well, because we have people who lost the table to feed their family on, and now they're losing the ability to put food on it. And it's like all compounding on each other, and they're scared to leave the house. So when SNAP benefits got taken away, we built this system that allows people who need things to ask for them digitally and shop for them digitally. So just think of it like an e-com store. If you're in the worst moment of your life, the last thing you want to do is go wait on a line for 2 hours and dig through piles of somebody else's old underwear. It's the most dehumanizing, demoralizing experience possible, and people mean so well, and the way that LA showed up was so beautiful, and everybody dumped their closet on Pasadena, and it was gorgeous. The experience from a fire survivor perspective is awful because literally, like, Patty got somebody's old stained sweatpants and a bunch of half-used toiletries, and in that moment where you have so much shame about needing things, you're a person who's like built your own life and you have your own tastes and your own, what you want is some agency to rebuild with dignity and to have choice. Not to just accept whatever. And what it creates is honestly a lot of waste because you have a lot of people who there's just piles and piles of stuff. There's this incredible company here called Sway Sew Shop, and their thing is repurposing stuff from the textile industry and making it into really cool clothes and doing dye baths and stuff like that. One of the owner of Sway and I were talking, and she was just like outraged because she was like, the amount of textile waste that was generated after this disaster is astronomical, and that is a whole other level of eco fallout that, like, it just plays back into why we have disasters in the first place. It's just this ain't it, guys.
Yeah,
so we created
far
an
greater
e-com
efficiencies. Far greater efficiencies are possible with innovation.
And it's also about human dignity, right? Like, if your goal is to help people, do it in a way that actually helps them. And isn't just, well, beggars can't be choosers. And, like, let's just, you should be happy that you're getting anything at all. Actually, like, it's not that hard to give people agency. So we created an e-commerce model. You just go online and you shop for the things that you need. And the donated stuff is there. And if you want a discount code to shop for something, discounted building materials or whatever, you just get a discount code like you do anywhere else. It's like we just used the tools of the time and created a 2025 model for a 2025 problem. So the Kristen Bell of it all, when the SNAP benefits were getting politicized and ripped around, a lot of our fire survivors were in really dire situations. And so and of course with SNAP, it's very touchy about being open about that. And I grew up on food stamps, like in certain moments, you don't want to tell anybody that you're on food stamps. So I called Kristen, I DM'd her. I've never met her in real life. She started following me during 2020. I've been doing this kind of work for a long time. And she and I have this, like, we feel like friends, but have actually never met in real life. And I DM'd her and I was like, hey, do you know anybody who feels strongly about the SNAP stuff and getting money to those families? Because I got a lot of people who need help. And she was like, me. And I was like, okay, rad. And she connected me with a bunch of her friends who all donated too. And what we did was we created a digital grocery gift card. And it was not, because we were also hearing that a lot of people couldn't get to food banks. They didn't have money for food, so they didn't have money for gas. They were already strapped with work, so they didn't take couldn't take the time off to wait in 3-hour lines at the food bank. And food banks don't tend to have anything nutritious because it's mostly packaged stuff. So there were like the Altadena Free Farmers Market has been doing incredible work for so long and just quietly showing up and giving people free nutrient-rich foods. There are groups out there who are doing an incredible job at this.
But they couldn't keep up with the need during that time. Like they were trying, like no shade to food banks. They were trying, but they were offered an impossible problem.
An impossible problem. It took all of us pitching in. Our method of pitching in was to give people a gift card for 8 different grocery chains so you could shop wherever you like to shop and get we were delivering groceries to people affected by the ice raids for a while, and what struck me was when people were asking for things, they only trusted me and Patty, so we had to do it personally, and when they were asking for things, they would just say yogurt, and I would be like, what flavor of yogurt? And they'd be like, oh my God, you're going to give us a choice in flavor? And I was like, well, do your kids just like any flavor of yogurt? And they're like, well, no, my kid hates peach and hates strawberry. Can you please get the vanilla? And I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, your preferences don't go away. And when you're in a moment of crisis, having to eat peach yogurt when you hate peach yogurt is not going to make you feel any better. It's just going to make your life like that little bit harder. We just don't need it. So we gave people grocery gift cards, and we did it digitally. So all they had to do, once they were a verified survivor, all they had to do was respond to an email and say, yes, me. And we were like, great, no questions asked. Here's a gift card, and you can shop somewhere in your own neighborhood on your own time for the things that you like. And that was 100% because Kristen Bell was like, yes, what do I do? And she literally just put down a credit card and sent in a donation.
I love that. And it also solves this other problem too. I'd like to say fintech is going to be more and more part of disaster recovery and relief instead of like a disparate number of gift cards. Like I remember sorting through thousands of dollars of gift cards that were donated from across the country and, to distribute. And there were stores in there that don't even exist here. They're only on the East Coast. So that's just a waste of resources. And people were very well, and they had lots of great intentions and they cared so much. But there is a way to do it that's just far more efficient, and something like PostFire actually gives them the ability to do that. And I also tell people all the time, I'm like, sure, I love Io and Patty personally, but if I didn't think PostFire was the answer for many of the things that we've been trying to solve for here, it just simply wouldn't be anything that I talked about. I politely just let that one go, right? I just would, right? Because the way that we're built is everything has to serve fire survivors first. That's the deal. But it really is that good. And it is, I do believe that the funding will come, the substantial funding. I know that you've been given some funding, but really the funding to not only serve the people of Los Angeles and to pilot and perfect it there, but then to understand that this is something we need at scale, and people have to be paid. Working in a nonprofit doesn't mean no profit. It doesn't mean that you should become your own client. Do you know that we should underpay people to the point where they become their own client, and nonprofits are rewarded for underpaying their talent, and then people wonder why that's a hard industry to retain talent. And it's true. You could have started a consulting agency and then just done whatever. You could have done other things. I could have left this easily 5 years ago, and I could be making $250,000 a year, $500,000 a year. But what you really want to do is make impact, this is the lane to do it. But that comes at a cost, and the cost, most of it goes into development and talent. If I can just scream into the rafters.
It's a really unfortunate thing in our world right now, and I've seen it from, I've seen the pitchforks come out amongst my neighbors around how money at nonprofits is spent. And what I see on the ground is the vast majority of people in nonprofit work who are helping people every single day are women, largely in Altadena especially, women of color. And then so when those pitchforks come out, there's often this Venn diagram overlap of people who are really believe in equity, really believe in parity for women, really believe in parity for people of color, and then they're also like, where's the money? Where's the money going? How dare it go to salaries? This is not what nonprofit is about. And it's just this like fundamental misunderstanding of the fact that when you expect people to work for free, you drain the talent pool because people can only do that for so long. And what it results in is a lot of women working for less than what they're worth, you included, and having to carry 55 people's jobs. Patty does 6 people's jobs. Patty and I haven't taken a paycheck since the day PostFire was started. Because we can't, because we have to every day make the choice to pay our team instead, because we don't want to not fulfill the promises that we've made to fire survivors. And when it comes down to it, there are very few philanthropies who support operating costs. And operating costs means having an office, having a salary. So when we talk about also sustainability of an organization, we've had someone recently say that we need sustainability models for the next couple of years. And we're like, well, respectfully, you don't pay for offices, so getting this out of our house would be a real sustainability model because we would protect our mental health.
Also, if you want sustainability, fund for 3 years then. Like, this is what I always say. I'm like, fund for 3 years. Make sure they have those operating costs, and you can monitor it. You can come back in. You can say, we're going to commit to you for 3 years. Here's your first year. Here are the terms by which we will enter into a contract. You can do your due diligence and protect your donor dollars and donor intent. But also, if you don't fund innovation, then we do not innovate. It's not that complicated. We just don't do it. And we go to the old model, which actually doesn't serve us in a compounded time where we have so many different types of perils, we have so many different types of pressures. We actually have to meet the moment and build for what comes next, what we need now, not what we needed 50 years ago. We cannot continue to run nonprofits and fund them like we did as though it were the early 80s. Like, what are we doing?
Well, also what we learned in Altadena especially is Altadena is a very unique community, right, in terms of fires. I don't know that there's been another mega fire that's affected a predominantly black and brown community or a largely black and brown community. And what we came up against a lot was that people were coming in with ways of doing things and systems and approaches, and our community was kind of like, that's not how we do stuff. We don't want that. And so the old models were banging up against the actual survivor experience, and it became so clear that a lot of the entities who want to help survivors are led by people who are not survivors, have not lived through this experience, or not like you haven't been on the ground experiencing it, walking through it. And so the solutions that are being created are created in a vacuum.
Yep.
PostFire was built by people living it, in real time, during it, and with a live feedback loop with thousands of people. When there are for-profit entities who are building things similar to what we're doing, who are keeping a very close watch on what we are doing, and the sad end reality of the philanthropy thing is, on the one side, why you keep having solutions that are not for the people that people respond well to and actually participate in is because the only people that can afford to build them are rich white men. And so when you have a rich white man, their experience of a disaster is going to be completely different than somebody who's living through it without that safety net. So their solution that they're going to create is going to be completely different.
I will
On the
say
other
this,
side,
sorry, go ahead. You're in the middle of your point.
well, the other side is there is a rich white man who did a really good job and has changed the entire industry, but we don't have to name him, but we know who he is. On the other side, the sad end reality of philanthropy's hesitance to fund innovation is that our only choice is going to have to be to spin out a for-profit. Because either we can give it up and abandon it, or we're going to have to go for-profit. And we have, from the beginning, said, we never want to charge survivors anything. We want to keep costs and fees as low as possible and pass everything through to the survivor. That model generates what survivors actually need.
Yep.
But if philanthropy doesn't see the value in it and entities don't see the value in support, or they can't figure out, it's not that they don't see the value. Everyone's like, this is incredible. But they, in the end, don't make a way to make it happen. If they don't, we're just going to have to go for a profit. And like, that sucks that that's the end result. The people who suffer are survivors. You know?
It really does. It's really. I do believe that there are ways that if someone would fund you for like 3 to 5 years, just like any other platform or tech thing, where people dump a lot of money into VC money into startups, and then they're like, oh, and 9 out of 10, whatever it is, don't work, and then they write it off and they go on with their day. Well, you can do the same thing here. It all gets written off anyway. Like, you're taking it off of your taxes, so you have a tax write-off. I don't really, quite frankly, see what the difference is in your investment, and there is a way, I think, for PostFire to be profitable on the back end for anonymized data, not personal
Usually.
data, not that, but there is a way to do it that could actually be really helpful for so many people. And that's one of the pieces that I find really frustrating. And in the age of social media, it's really important that we have these kind of private ways to actually serve people. But we also have to deal with the reality that the donors are very afraid of getting blown up on social media by a former reality star, who is like screaming into the universe every single day and has, over 1 million followers. And so whether or not, and, respect, because that person's a fire survivor, so I have compassion for that piece of it and is angry. I totally understand those pieces, but they have the capacity to destroy, and they don't want to be under, congressional they don't want congressional investigations. They don't want the president tweeting about it from, Scotland in the middle of the night. They don't want that kind of attention. So they're like, I don't want to do this. But it's right at the precise moment when we need to have courage, because this is exactly what is needed for the people. And if you can listen for the people who are walking it, you will do the right thing. Fire survivors are the best. They're the best R&D on the planet. And it's so efficient, and it's so much more economical ultimately at the end. So I have lots of opinions about that. But we are at an hour and a half, so I'm going to say this.
God.
I know, because I knew that it would be good, though. And I didn't even make you cry, not even once. And so I must be losing my touch, quite frankly.
It's hard these days.
I know. But
I've been broken by all this. It's hard to get in there.
I know. Well, don't challenge me, because, I don't want, that's not even a good challenge to take. I know this has been a journey that you didn't choose. Like, I respect that entirely, and I would never wish any of this upon anybody, but I am always grateful for the people that it brings into my life, and I'm very glad to have you and Patty in my life. And I know that it comes from pain and suffering, but I do believe that we're all going to walk you home together, and that you have so much to be proud of. And I hope that this last 90 minutes has sort of like also helped you remember where you were and where you are, and why you do have so much to be proud of for what you've created at a time of great need.
Thank you. Before we go, I want to ask you if you know how the moon was created.
I don't.
I promise this is relevant.
Okay.
This reminded me of something that's really important to me, which is when I was 12, I was having or 15 or something, I was going through my first heartbreak. I think I was having a really hard time, something like that. My dad was like, do you know about the moon? Millions of years ago, a comet named Thea smashed into Earth and knocked it off its axis, and all this debris flew out into the universe, and scientists disagree about whether it froze or it overheated, but everything on the planet came to a stop and died. Ultimately, like the most ultimate catastrophe possible. And all that debris over thousands of years gathered in the solar system and became our literal light in the darkness, the moon. And the moon is the result of incredible catastrophe and unexpected results. You are a moon for me. Your team in our lives have been moons for us. This work has been a moon for us. Whenever shit really hurts or really goes wrong, I remember the moon. And thank you for being a moon to us.
Oh, well, now you're going to make me cry. I really love that.
Gotcha.
You got me. You got me. Well, thank you, Io. I really appreciate you. So
Ditto.
you left me speechless. So here we go. It's an honor. It's an honor and a privilege. You know, it's the work of my life, and I think it's worth every moment. And that explains why all the pictures from Artemis show the moon in such a rainbow of colors in a way we haven't seen before. And it was so beautiful. Much needed.
Moon's a really special thing.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Keep that one.
I'm going to keep that one. All right. This has been Io Wright, Eaton Fire survivor, journalist, pod master. I just made that up in my brain.
Hardly.
Many, many things, many, many accomplishments. But I think the one at the end of all that you'll be most proud of is how you helped your neighbors. And so I applaud you for that. Thank you so much for being with us on How to
Good
Disaster.
neighbor.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, JGT.
Thank you. Thank you.